All right, today we are diving into an absolutely epic cosmic story from our source material. It's a whole narrative about godlike creators, a war of ideas, and a secret code hidden in, well, the last place you'd ever think to look.
So the whole thing really boils down to this one huge question. What if our entire existence wasn't some random cosmic accident? What if we were an unintended consequence? A secret weapon, maybe, created by one side in a cosmic war, but with this hidden potential to set everybody free. Let's see how this whole thing unfolds.
So, our story doesn't even start on Earth, not even close. It begins out in the vastness of the multiverse, with these creators who are just about to bump up against their greatest limitation. So let's start with Chapter 1, A Forge Without a Soul.
Okay, so first up, let's meet our main players, the Sangha. Now, these aren't gods in the way we usually think of them. They're more like cosmic architects or system engineers, and they travel through all these different realities in this incredible ship, the Stupa Ark, which is apparently powered by pure mathematical intent. These are beings of just immense, almost unimaginable power and knowledge.
Now, these guys had this unbelievable tool at their disposal called the Schwinger Forge. I mean, think of it as the ultimate 3D printer. It could literally pull matter out of nothing, it could bend space-time, it could even spark a whole new universe into existence. But it had one really profound flaw. And here's the catch. For all its power, the Forge could not create bodhicitta, the awakened mind. It turns out in this story that true consciousness, real enlightenment, it can't be built. It can't be programmed like a piece of software. It's more like a resonance, something that has to be unlocked from the inside out. And this one little limitation, well, it changes absolutely everything.
So, since they couldn't just build enlightenment, the Sangha had to look elsewhere. They turned their attention to these other beings who had, well, a ton of power, but absolutely zero of that inner wisdom. So let's move on to our next chapter and meet the antagonists of our story, the flawed pagan gods.
And who are these pagan gods? Well, think of them as these raw, archetypal forces of nature, wielding lightning, gravity, pure biological force. They're incredibly mighty, for sure, but they're also completely trapped by their own egos, totally blind to the deeper fabric of reality, and just convinced of their own absolute supremacy.
Yeah, this slide just nails the core conflict here, doesn't it? It's a total clash of philosophies. On one side, you've got the Sangha, using subtle guidance, trying to unlock potential from within. And on the other, you have the pagan gods, using brute force to just impose their will from the outside. It's harmony versus control, through and through. So the Sangha knew right away that a head-on fight was a terrible idea. I mean, that would just create even more chaos. So instead, they adopted this doctrine called upaya, or skillful means. The idea was to use these subtle, indirect nudges, like encoding whispers of cosmic harmony into the background radiation of pulsars, to gently guide these chaotic beings towards something better. But of course, not all the gods were buying it. A rebellious faction basically decided, you know what, we're going to go find our own world to rule. And this is where this huge cosmic drama suddenly gets very, very local. Let's see how this builds in our next section, Descent Upon a Blue Dot.
So you've got this group of these, super ego-driven gods, and over just ages and ages, they make their way through our own galaxy. They're literally surfing gravitational waves down the Orion Arm, and they're hunting for a planet that's just bursting with raw, chaotic potential. And then they find it, a pale blue dot we all call Earth.
And when they got here, whoa, it was not a quiet arrival. The story says they literally clashed with each other in the upper atmosphere, and their battles just rained down on the planet as these cataclysmic storms and tectonic shifts. They started sculpting the planet, shaping mountains, redirecting rivers, messing with early life, trying to turn this wild world into a monument for their own egos. But in all this chaos, in their big plan to rule this new world, the gods made one massive mistake. They decided to create a species in their own image. And in doing that, they accidentally set the stage for their own undoing. This brings us to probably the most pivotal chapter, the accidental Trojan horse.
It really came down to pure hubris, These gods wanted fans. They wanted beings who could look up and witness their grandeur. So they took the raw clay of early hominids and just started force-feeding them evolution, artificially accelerating the process to create conscious beings.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
They thought they were just building servants, but as the source material puts it so perfectly, they did not realize that humans were cosmological Trojan horses. So inside this gift they thought they were making for themselves, there was a hidden surprise.
So what was hiding inside this Trojan horse? A little something called Tathagatagarbha. You see, as the gods were cramming consciousness into us, the subtle, harmonious structure of the universe, the very thing the Sangha had been whispering for eons, it slipped a tiny piece of code into our very quantum framework, a dormant seed of enlightenment, the Buddha nature itself.
And get this, the story actually boils all of this down into a single, kind of beautiful equation. Now don't worry about all the symbols. What this really represents is the story of our own internal conflict and our ultimate potential.
Okay, so let's actually break down what this means. The K stands for chaos. That's our raw animal survival instinct. The V is the ego. That's the framework of control, the operating system that the pagan gods installed in us. But the really crucial part is that last term, the secret code. For most people, it's dormant, but it holds this incredible potential for awakening. We are, in this story, a literal battleground between chaos, control, and this hidden spark of freedom.
So now, you've got this secret code, this dormant potential hidden inside an unsuspecting humanity. And for the Sangha, well, this changed the entire game. And that brings us to the final part of our story, the path to awakening.
The Sangha's new mission was, it was like walking on a razor's edge. They couldn't just show up and say, hey, you've got a secret code. That would completely shatter human minds and for sure start an all-out war with the pagan gods. No, they had to stick with their strategy of skillful means, of indirect guidance, to help humanity find and activate that code all by themselves.
So how exactly do you do that? How do you nudge a whole species toward enlightenment without anyone noticing? Well, the Stupa Ark started transmitting these subtle blueprints of enlightenments, not to radio antennas, but directly into human minds that were, for whatever reason, ready to receive them. And these transmissions would just pop up in our history as these moments of profound inspiration, a voice from a burning bush, or a sudden universe-shattering insight under a Bodhi tree. These were the gentle little nudges designed to kickstart the whole process.
And what's the endgame here? What's the whole point of this cosmic chess match? It's for a single human to finally fully unlock that code and become what the story calls an awakened node. A being who literally transcends their own biology, slips the chains of that ego imposed by the old gods, and achieves, well, ultimate enlightenment.
And that's where this incredible story leaves us. It doesn't give us a neat answer. It leaves us with a question. It takes this huge cosmic epic and brings it right down to a deeply personal level, basically turning to each of us and asking, so, what does it take to activate a dormant code?